Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Joining me today is Kevin Cork, who is a certified financial planner with the Calgary-based Absolute Group. Thanks for joining us today, Kevin.
Mario, it is my pleasure.
All right, let's talk about some data and survey things that were released, results that were released just recently by FP Canada, talking about money and obviously the COVID pandemic that's been going on for the last 12 months or so. Money continues to be the top source of stress for most Canadians. Not surprising, I guess. Is it, Kevin?
No, I mean the COVID has brought everything into really sort of sharp relief. But what I've found in working with people over the years is that it's always sort of very closely tied to a lot of stress, a lot of fears, a lot of worries. Because of course, it's not something that happens in isolation. It touches all other aspects of people's lives.
So tell me a little bit about why money is such a stress at this particular time.
I think there's probably two or three things that have flared up. I mean, obviously for a lot of Canadians, and obviously this is a lot, the COVID, the pandemic, the government response has shut down a lot of the industries, has shut down a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunities for people. It's put a lot of things on hold. And I think for also a lot of people, it's brought home to them that they don't have, the emergency funds in place that financial planners dream about people having. So I think it's sort of been hit on both sides. So it's been definitely sort of a double whammy for sure.
And is there much stress as it relates to their retirements as well?
Yeah, the retirement aspect is the retirement. Going into retirement, or where you're sort of in the early years of your retirement, any kind of a disruption of income, or as it spilled over into your investments, into the stock markets, the bond markets, those kinds of things. At least a year ago, when we didn't know the sort of parameters of what was happening, that created a lot of volatility in the various investments and things, and that would be extra hard on people who had just retired or who were hoping to retire during 2020 or 2021. So that extra volatility that was completely unforeseen. It's that thing that's not completely unexpected, is the kind of thing that can certainly derail or at least postpone or defer retirement plan.
Now, you alluded to this before, but I wanted to touch a little more on this. The impact that financial stress has in other areas of people's lives. Can you talk a little bit about that, Kevin?
Yeah, it's easy for us to sort of dismiss that as though it's only financial worries, but the reality is that for most people, those financial worries spill into actual stress, actual health problems, the being unable to sleep. I mean, as that survey referenced, there was a lot of people who, because of their financial worries, which was their sort of biggest single worry, that spilled into things like not having their health, not being able to keep their health under control or do as well as they could. Because really, it is a matter of, it's about looking for safety and looking for security, and the financial, your financial well-being is tightly tied to your emotional sense of well-being and security.
Yeah, exactly. So what do people do? How can they kind of alleviate a lot of that stress when it comes to finances?
Well, the upside about COVID, one of the things that I've seen sort of on looking at the flip side, and I think this would apply to most Canadians, is that COVID helped us realize how much we really needed to spend, rather than what we just wanted to spend. So a simple example, or one that I see sort of most clearly, was when when you couldn't go out to eat, or you couldn't go out to drinks, or you couldn't go out to the bar, a lot of people noticed that they started to save quite a bit of money. And of course, that got diverted into like ordering off Amazon and stuff. But the idea of getting a much better sense of how how much your life costs you in a simplified world, in a less busy, less frantic world. That aspect was a clear illustration for those who sort of took the time to look at that. So related more directly to your question, I think the number one thing people can do if they aren't working with a financial planner, but the number one thing people can do is to sit down and say, okay, what do we actually need to spend on a month-to-month basis? Let's look at the Visa, let's look at the bank card, let's look at the indirect and say, okay, how many of these things, where is our cash going? And even just that one step, finding out where they're spending money. And again, not to force people into budgets, but just to create that awareness of where the money goes, starts to build the certainty around what you need. And as you gather more of that information, that starts to relieve some of the stress, because otherwise it just feels like a mess, a hodgepodge, a swirling of ideas and things around people's heads.
All right, super. Well, thanks for joining us today, Kevin.
It's my pleasure, Mario. I'm always happy to see that smiling face.
Thanks a lot. That has been Kevin Cork, a certified financial planner with Calgary-based Absolute Group. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Thanks for joining us today.